take a quick look at the software that's going to be used in CS1032, as well as how you can get that set up on your own home computer. It is important that you make sure that your computer is compatible with the software that we'll be using, and it's your responsibility to make sure that's all working before we start in on any assignments in the course. You don't want to leave this to the last few days before assignment due date to find out that you need a different computer or that something isn't going to work right. So there's three main software packages that we have to worry about. The first one is Microsoft Office. Many of you will probably already have this installed on your own home computers, but it's important to make sure that we have these three main programs: Word, Excel, and Access. Access is probably the one that you might be a bit iffy about. But don't worry, all of this software is available for free to Western students, and you can download that by going to myoffice.uwo.ca. But it is important to note that Access is only available for the Windows operating system. We'll talk a little bit about what some of your options are if you only have a Mac computer. But for now, we're going to take a look at how you can install Office on your own home computer. Go to a browser. I have one up here on the screen now. Type in myoffice.uwo.ca. This will take you to the Western sign-in. Sign in with your normal Western email and username. And once you get to this page, you want to click on this little box up here that's called Install Office. You want to click on Office 365 app. You'll see that includes Outlook, OneDrive for Business, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and more. And the more in there will be Access if you're on a Windows computer. Click that. You'll see it starts downloading the Office setup file. Once it's downloaded, you just click down here if you're using Chrome. If you're using another browser, it might put it in your Downloads folder. Either way, you just launch the application. So what you'll do is you go through, you follow all the steps the installer comes up with, and hopefully by the end you will have Word, Excel, and Access installed on your computer. And we'll go back and talk about the other software packages. So the next big thing you're going to need is an ER diagram editor tool. And the one we'll be using in this course is the GIA diagram editor. This is available for free, and it works on both Windows computers and Mac computers, and even Linux operating systems. So whatever your operating system is, this tool should work fine, and it's free. So to get it, you go to the giainstaller.de, and there's a dash in there. You can go to our browser, and we'll take a look. So I already have it up here, but you type in gia-installer.de, and it's going to have this page come up. So if you're using Windows, you just click Free Download. If you're using a different operating system or it doesn't show your operating system by default, you'd click on the operating system down here. So if you're a Mac user, you'd click Mac OS X. If you're a Linux user, you'd click Linux. Since we're a Windows user right now, we're going to click the free download right here. And your download should start, and you can see it downloading here. Once it's downloaded, click on the executable. It's going to ask you what language. Next. Just follow through the steps. Don't need the Python plugin, so the defaults should be fine. Click Install. Once it's completed, hit Finish. And GIA should be installed on your computer. So for me, I have it on my desktop right here. If it doesn't show up on your desktop, you can just go in your Start menu and type in DIA, and it should be in your list of applications. You might want to start it up just to make sure it's working. And you're going to get a screen that looks something like this, which should change in a sec once it's loaded. The first time it can take a little bit to load. And that will look something like this. We don't have to worry about how to use it yet. We'll be covering that later in the course. But just make sure it's installed correctly, and then you can actually start the application. So for users on Mac OS X, there might be a few extra steps. It will inform you about any other software packages you might need. On Windows, it should just be the one executable. So once again, it is important that you check that it's working and running before you assume that it's working on your computer. Don't just install it and assume that's that. Make sure you actually open it up and see that it opens. It looks like this. So the next piece of software that we're going to have to talk about is a text editor. So for this course, we need a specific kind of text editor. We want one that edits raw, flat files, or just plain text files. That means we don't want what you see is what you get type editor, like Word that adds formatting, or WordPad that adds formatting. We want something that's just going to show us the raw file with no extra formatting. That's going to be important when we get to XML, because we're going to want to edit those files without any formatting, because if we start putting formatting in there, it's going to cause errors. XML files have to be read by both a computer and a human, so that means we don't want any fancy formatting or anything like that. So to do that, we have two options. If you're on Windows, you can use Notepad++ or brackets. If you're on Mac, you probably won't be able to use Notepad++, that's Windows only, but you can use the brackets editor. Both of those are available for free, and I have links to them here. So we're going to take a look at Notepad. So go to notepad-plus-plus.org, and you should see a site that looks like this. So it's important to note that Notepad++ is not the same as the default Notepad application that's built into Windows. This is a different program. So don't think that you already have it installed because you have Notepad. You want Notepad++. This is a bit more powerful application. It'll make it a lot easier to work with XML when we get there. So go to Downloads. This shows you all the releases. We just want the newest one right at the top. And it'll give you a few options to download. So by default, it's going to suggest the 32-bit one. It should be fine in most cases, but most of you probably have a 64-bit computer, so you could also use the 64-bit version. In this case, I'm going to try the 64-bit version. You should probably try the 64-bit version, and if that doesn't work, then you can try the 32-bit one. But the vast majority of computers out there today that are being used are going to be 64-bit. We're going to click on the installer. It's going to download it down here. We're going to click on that after it downloads. You just follow along the steps. English in this case. Next screen's going to look like this. Follow along. So the default option should be fine. If you wanted other languages, you could go into localization and select the different languages there. In our case, the default's going to be fine. I'll create a shortcut on our desktop. And it has installed. So in my case, you can see it's on the desktop here. But if it's not on your desktop, just go to your Start menu, click Notepad, and you can see this is the default application built into Windows. We don't want to use that. We want to use Notepad++, which we just installed. Make sure it opens up, and it should look something like this. Just a text editor. You don't have to know anything special about it. You just type the text in and you save it. As long as it's working on your computer, you're good for this point. Oh, let's go back. So in addition to those 3 software packages I talked about, there's also a few recommended pieces of software. So for using OWL and the MyVLab MIS, we do recommend that you use Firefox and Chrome. Whether you're on Windows or Mac, those are both available for free. So I do recommend that you use those browsers. That's what we test the OWL site in, and it's also what the requirements for MyVLab MIS suggest to use. I also strongly suggest that you have some sort of remote backup software because you want to make sure that all your assignments, as you're doing them, you're backing them up. And nowadays, there's software out there like OneDrive or Google's Drive, Dropbox, things like that, that will both back up your work as you do it, as well as create versions. So if something goes wrong later on, you can always roll it back. It's really important that you're making remote backups, not just local backups, because there has been cases in the past where students have had some kind of catastrophic event where their whole computer is destroyed, or even their whole house, fire or something like that. So in cases like that, you want to make sure that your work is backed up both locally on your computer and somewhere remote, somewhere outside of your house. And as a Western student, you do have access to OneDrive, as well as a bunch of space available for you. So I recommend using that. It's going to be free for you, and it will be pretty straightforward. It will tie into your Western account, just like downloading Office did. And once again, it is your responsibility to make sure your assignments are backed up. Saying my hard drive crashed or my computer isn't working is not going to be an excuse. So it's important that you both get those assignments done well in front of the due date, so there's time for things to go wrong, as well as making sure that you're backing it up, so there'll never be a case where you've lost the files, since those won't be accepted excuses. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about macOS. If you have a Windows computer, you can just end the video now. But if you have a macOS, we do have to talk about that problem with Microsoft Access. So macOS computers, those are Apple computers, are not really recommended for this course because you're not going to be able to use Access. It is still possible to do a lot of the assignments that don't involve Access on a Mac computer, but when we come to those Access computer or Access assignments, it is going to be a bit of a problem. So what I recommend is that you try to get hold of a Windows computer for this course if possible. If that isn't possible, there are a few alternatives that we could talk about, but it is going to be up to you to find those alternatives and to ensure that they're working correctly. The first solution is to use one of Western's GenLabs. Those are General Student Computing Labs. So if you're in London or on the Western campus, there's a few buildings that have computing labs that are open to everyone, so long as the course isn't already using them. You can find a full schedule for when courses are using these labs on the WTS website. I have a link in the slides as well as in this video. So the first building that has a GenLab is the Health Science Building, which we can see on screen now. The Health Science Building has 3 GenLabs. We have HSB13, HSB14, HSB16. Those would be the room numbers, and they are available on the first floor of that building. The second building that has a GenLab is the North Campus Building. And this GenLab is going to be in room NCB 105, and it's on the first floor, right as you're walking towards the cafeteria. So GenLabs are open for most of the day, but they are closed at night and on weekends. There are a few that are open on weekends, but you'll have to check the WTS website to get full details on when those are available and which ones are open on weekends. The last building that has GenLabs is the Social Science Center, or SCC, and this one has 3 GenLabs. They're in the basement of the SSC, so usually you would enter and then go down the stairs towards the food court, and they would be on that lower level. So they would be SCC 1000, 1012, and 1032. All of these GenLabs are going to have Microsoft Access installed, Microsoft Excel, Notepad++, brackets, and we're working right now to get them to install DIA, the diagram editor for ERDs. However, the only real software you should be concerned about as a Mac user is Microsoft Access, as there's at least all of that available for Mac OS or some alternative. It's just Access that you're going to need for the assignments. So if you're not on campus or not in London and you can't make it to those GenLabs, the second solution would be to use MyVLab. So that's not to be confused with MyLab from Pearson, our textbook. MyVLab is a service offered by Western, which allows you to remotely connect to a lab computer at Western, no matter where you are in the world. So I only recommend this solution as a last resort because it doesn't work as great if you have a slower internet connection, and in the past some students have had issues when they disconnect. It also requires you to understand how to move files between the remote computer that you're connecting to and your local Windows or macOS computer in this case. So I have another video about how to use this. So if you're interested in that solution, please check out the MyVLab video that should be posted to OWL in the Week 1 tab. So that's all I have for you in regards of installing the required software. If you have any questions about this software, how to install it, or you're encountering any issues, please do post to the course OWL forums, where I or another TA, or maybe even a fellow student, will be able to assist you. Thank you, and have a great day.